This video will be on the topic of setting the right type of expectations concerning the type of insight you can expect about your upcoming interview. And I'm primarily talking about the final interview rounds here, right? Basically, in the same way you have to build rapport with your interviewers, both for the screening and for the final interview rounds, the same way it's about rapport. It's also about the types of questions you're asking your recruiter, your main point of contact before these interviews. Okay, so topic number 1, will my interview be technical or behavioral? So in my experience, such a question will not provide you with a super accurate answer to many instances of people I've spoke to. And there are several reasons for this. Your point of contact might not be sure which way the interview will be. Most of the time, it's straightforward for you to make an educated guess on, hey, can this person ask me technical questions? I mean, if they are HR, obviously, you know, it's less likely so. And the third point here, if I'd have to interview someone, I could easily switch between a behavioral and technical context within the same question. Okay? So, for example, if I do a deep dive. So, long story short, consider it's going to be, if you cannot make an educated guess, consider it's going to be both. Okay. Second thing I'd like to talk about here, of a good idea for many of you to do is a scenario where you realize you cannot prepare your job interview for whatever reason. Either you don't have enough time to allocate for this, either maybe you're stressed out or whatnot. It's a good idea that you ask them to postpone your interview. So I cannot tell you the number of times I've spoke to candidates who knew they had absolutely zero chance whatsoever, and still they prefer to waste 6 people's times, 6 interviewers' times, interviewing with that company. So this doesn't work in my experience, and it's a good idea to postpone it, to ask them to postpone it if at all possible, right? Use common sense. Number 3, I would not recommend you to ask them for sample questions that you could expect in the job interviews. At Amazon in particular, because it's there's many sample interview questions I even have on my channel, but you could also ask for sample questions to your specific role. You could ask AI for this, and in my experience, these lists are quite useful. All right, so if I'd be a recruiter and someone would ask me this, I would just have the reflex of asking Google, hey, top 5 Amazon interview questions, I will just forward them to you. So don't expect them to be too accurate with these things. It doesn't work this way for obvious reasons, right? Next one, number 4. It's a good idea that you're going to have to prepare pretty much on the principles. So if you ask them, hey, I know you have those leadership principles, I know your interviews are also around those leadership principles, so which ones would be the most important to prepare for the interview that I'm going to have, and which ones do you think are irrelevant? Okay, so the primary reason to ask them about this would be to see if you can find out some intel on what they're actually interested in for a candidate in your role. What will be the key principles? It's unlikely they will let you know, but sometimes they do spill the beans with these things. And also, sometimes they will exclude a number of these principles, but in my experience, only 2 or 3, maximum 4 of them. So not such a big deal, but still you could ask them these questions on the principles, right? Now, a bad idea to ask someone about job interviews is, what is the preferred length of your answers? How long your answers should be during those interviews, right? So understand that these things are quite subjective, both given the candidate, both given the role that you're applying for, both given the interviewer, especially given the interviewer that you're talking to. So, for example, someone could go as far as to screen you on all the leadership principles, all 10 leadership principles that are relevant to your role within the same session, even twice. Okay, so then you'd obviously have to adapt with the shorter answers, or someone would only ask you 2 questions in 45 minutes. So I have instances of people who can speak very well for 15 minutes straight with long, convincing first answers, right? So where you want to be, the best answers are also the sharpest. As a general idea, I still recommend people give long, convincing first answers to the extent, of course, you're not rambling too much about these things, okay? But still, asking your recruiter how long your answer should be is not a good idea is not a good sign, if you ask me, of a high-performing candidate, at least. Number 6, a good idea to ask in a job before a job interview is who you're going to be interviewing with. This is the position titles. Oftentimes they will even tell you the name of your interviewers, but at least the position titles. And the reason for this is important because you would have to adapt your answers, your stories to the type of people you're talking to. Even picking your best stories with probably the most important stakeholders, such as the bar raiser in the process. That could also be a technique. But long story short, the sooner you find out the position titles, the people you're going to interview with, it's going to be a competitive advantage for you as a candidate. Okay. Number 7, a bad idea would be to ask them something online. So what do you think? How do I stack up against other candidates? And why do I say this? Because I hear quite often from candidates saying, Dan, don't worry, it's just a formality. They really like me. Okay. In fact, this is, you must think business here. It's not in anyone's interest that you over-prepare their job interviews, especially for senior leadership types of roles, and bias them, right? Because it's actually cheating for that specific job interview. So they rather tell you, hey, don't worry, it's just a formality, instead of telling, no, you should really take this seriously, because Amazon interviews are between the most serious in the industry. So that's why I don't believe it makes any sense. How do I stack up against other candidates, to ask the recruiter this question especially, right? Number 8, what I think is an excellent idea, and if this of course is your scenario, is if you interview with other companies and you expect, especially you have job offers with other employers, you should let them know in advance so that the scheduling will be appropriate, because most of the time if you receive a job offer, you will have a deadline for that, to either take it or leave it, right? So oftentimes there's conflicts around scheduling these things. So if you have something that you know it's pending, that you should definitely let them know before you're going to interview with them. Number 9, I believe it's a bad idea to ask them who the bar raiser will be in your interview. It's simply an internal matter, and you could also extrapolate these things. It's usually someone who's not going to be part of your future team. Okay, but really, I don't think it's a good idea you ask it as direct as that. Okay, and finally, number 10, a good idea, especially if you're someone who took their interview seriously and you prepared, proud of your story bank. You could ask them if you could share your story bank with them in advance, or with each interviewer, or some interviewers, or with your recruiter, to share it with them prior to your interview, on the idea that, hey, if you have nothing to hide, if you believe you're super skilled and you are the ideal candidate, well, there's no such thing, but if you're super well prepared and proud of your story bank, then why not let them know about this in advance? Okay, it's an experiment if you want, but still it's something for you to consider. Okay, and finally, a few more tips if you want, just to ensure that you build a type of rapport, set the right type of expectations, and keep it professional. Try to avoid flooding them with questions. Like if they say in each email, any questions, let me know. It doesn't mean you should literally follow up to every email they send you with more and more questions, right? Second tip is you should spend time to frame your questions and to structure your inquiries appropriately. You could even use AI to reward them to sound more professional if you want. But what I want to avoid is a scenario such as if they close like this, any questions, let me know, and your answer should be in 5 minutes. Do you have any sample questions? Okay, so if you just reactive with this, I don't believe it's a professional approach, and I don't believe it's beneficial to your performance. Also, another scenario you'd want to take into account here, some of you will not be able to answer them. For example, with the scheduling, you have some other competing priorities and you prefer to delay them for a number of days. Well, better be upfront with them and tell, hey, yeah, thank you for sending me this. I will have to take 2 or 3 days to decide what's the best schedule for the interviewing process, because I have this and that pending. So be transparent, be upfront with them, again in a context of building the right rapport with the recruiter or with your point of contact. It's useful, and if you think long term, it's going to also be beneficial to you. So I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.